and welcome to Night Treks. Well, it's dark out, and so it's time for the One Dark Tale because it's one dark night. This is our strange journey into one story that is dark and strange, maybe true. Parts of it may be true, but it's just one story, and I'll leave it to you to decide what's true and what's not. Now, tonight's tale, Florie. Well, we start this new series with a strange tale of murder and intrigue, one you may not have heard about. It was just a few years ago that I actually heard about it. While I knew the overarching story and the backstory behind it that you'll hear about at the end, but I didn't know about this part, and this made it all the more intriguing. Our story begins in Mobile, Alabama. On the 3rd of September, 1862, Florence Elizabeth Chandler, nicknamed Florie, was born to William George Chandler, who was a one-time mayor in Mobile and a partner in the banking firm of St. John Powers and Company, and Caroline Chandler. However, she never knew her father, as he had died by the time of her birth. Her mother, Caroline, remarried for the third time in 1872, when Florie was only 10 years old. Her mother married Baron Adolf von Rox, a cavalry officer in the German army. And when Florie was 19, they left Mobile, and while aboard ship, steaming to England, she happened to meet and fall in love with a man 23 years her senior, James Maybrick. After a whirlwind shipboard courtship, they were married when they got off the boat at St. James Church, Piccadilly, in London on July 27th, 1881, and they settled in Liverpool. After 8 tumultuous years that produced 2 children and infidelities by both parties, James was found dead on May 11th, 1889, and Florie was the prime suspect. At the inquest, it was discovered that James had trace amounts of arsenic poisoning, though while not enough to actually kill him. Now, it must be noted that James was considered a hypochondriac, and he was habitually taking small doses of arsenic throughout his adult life. It was rendered that arsenic poisoning was the cause of death, and Florie was taken into custody to stand trial for his murder, all the while proclaiming her innocence. She was accused of soaking flypaper in water to remove the arsenic and administering it to James. And those flypapers were commonly sold in the chemist shops. Florie stood trial at St. George's Hall in Liverpool and was convicted and sentenced to hang in the gallows. Now, a little side note here. Florie was the very first U.S. citizen to be convicted and sentenced to death in the United Kingdom. Never happened before. Well, at the proclamation of her death sentence, there was so much public outcry that Henry Matthews, the Home Secretary, and Lord Chancellor Halsbury took another look at the evidence and concluded that the evidence clearly establishes that Miss Maybrick administered poison to her husband with intent to murder, but that there is ground for reasonable doubt as to whether the arsenic so administered was in fact the cause of death. Therefore, the death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Another side note, at that time in England, the life sentence was usually only 20 years. And that's because it was believed that the conditions were so bad that no one could survive 20 years. while in prison. Now, Florie was transported to Working District Female Convict Prison, where she remained until 1896 when she was moved to Aylesbury Prison and remained there until her release in 1904. Because of her marriage to James Maybrick, an English citizen, she had relinquished her U.S. citizenship, but that was eventually restored after her release and on her return to the U.S. But because of her internment, she also lost parental rights to her 2 children, who remained in the care of the family doctor, and she never was able to see them again. As stated, after her release, she returned to the States. She tried to earn a living in the lecture circuit. She wrote a book called My 14 Lost Years. Before I forget about it, this is Florie. And this is where she was raised. That was her childhood home. And this is what it looks like today. Here's James. And there they are as a couple. And there she is being tried. It's an artwork that they called Florie in the Docks. And this is from a newspaper at that time, the mysterious poisoning case at Liverpool. And this was a flyer from her lecture tour. She tried that for a while. She wrote a book, like I said, My 14 Lost Years. She was lecturing on her innocence, but also on prison reform. But that didn't work out. In later life, Florie moved to Gaylordsville, a village in New Milford, Connecticut. And after some time of working unsuccessfully as a housekeeper, she became a recluse, having no company but some stray cats that she had taken in. Florie died alone and penniless in her home with nothing but a few scrapbooks of her former life and a family Bible. And in that family Bible was found a scrap of paper with faded writing on it with the instructions of how to remove arsenic from flypaper. So was she not so innocent after all? Now, or did somebody make up the little bit of finding the scrap of paper in her family Bible with those instructions? I mean, you can find her story on the internet. But here's the most intriguing thing about her story. The man she was married to, Mr. James Maybrick, has long been considered to be one of the top suspects thought to have been Jack the Ripper. So, did Florence Elizabeth Chandler Maybrick take out one of the most notorious and infamous serial killers of all time? What do you think? Well, now the tale is done. So join us on our next Strange Journeys Night Treks. Goodbye.